And then they were saying, no, but you just signed here, you just signed the agreement, we'll give you X amount. A number of business guys, they were from overseas, and they were based in Wellington. And bear in mind that I was needing the investment. And whatever I was doing in terms of my own bootstrapping, propping, was just not enough. I could feel the pressure. Like I was asking them, okay, but you're giving me that amount, but what do you want in return? How are we going to go forward? No, you don't worry about that. Don't worry, we'll decide afterwards. And as hard as it was for me, I just said, no, I can't do it that way. I really can't. I need to see it in black and white.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Ways to Wealth. Today I am joined by Fernanda. Fernanda, why don't you give us a bit of a brief on who you are and what you're working on?
Yeah. Okay, so I have this sort of little summary about myself that pretty much says I'm an artist in my heart, I'm a scientist by training, and I'm a Reiki master in my soul. So you can see a whole mixture. People often ask me, how can you be a scientist and a Reiki master? And my answer was, why not? Just because you think logically doesn't prevent you from having the more spiritual side kicking in. So, what have I done and what do I do? I was raised in Lisbon, and I did my schooling in Lisbon, and my dad, being an engineer, moved all over the world with his company to build bridges, dams, you name it. So when I was finishing school, he was living in South Africa. So it was a sort of an accident of fate. It wasn't intentional. I ended up going to the University of Cape Town, and I did a BSc honors in medical biochemistry. And then I did a master's in zoology and a PhD in medical microbiology. Then I got involved with a group led by Glaxo Wellcome that was Action TB, that globally looked at ways of finding information on Mycobacterium tuberculosis, which was really a disease prevalent in South Africa and still is. And especially with the AIDS epidemics, really sort of spreading in Africa. So I was part of their group, and that sort of allowed me to develop my skills in terms of the molecular and cellular biology of understanding how the immune system reacted to stimuli. In that case was bacteria, but it means to anything. And our skin, as an organ, our biggest organ that is exposed to the environment, really sort of stimulates our immune system to be able to cope. Otherwise, you get infected too easily, or, you're not healthy. So,
right.
And as a result of that, I ended up being invited to come to New Zealand, and I ended up working on another pathogen for a short time, and became associated with a biotech company. And then I kind of had this, I had the feeling that I had all this knowledge, all this training in science, but I wanted something that was more relatable to people. And so I left the biotech company, and I became what is called an account manager, working for Roche Diagnostics, where I was selling back to the universities, the places I worked with, some quite fancy sequencing technology tools. And then after that, I kind of decided, no, it's time to do something I started in my head in the 80s, which was to have my own skincare. But from a point of view that it needed to be skincare that wasn't going to harm anyone in the process, and had to be sustainably done, and not have hype associated with it. Because look, no product is going to make you 20 years younger unless you have Photoshop to help with. So that's just be plain and clear. But you can treat your skin adequately, properly. So you look fantastic. And when you look fantastic, you feel terrific. When you feel terrific, people say, wow, you look so good. So how do you feel? Then you feel great. So it's part of this aspect of just improving who you are just by making an effort. But if I can just step back a little bit, when I was a teenager, what I wanted to be was an archaeologist. That was my dream. And my dad would not allow that because archaeology was a hobby. So that's why I went into science, because that was, you had to do, you either do science or medicine or engineering or advocacy. You couldn't do, archaeology, which is, so I think all throughout my life, I've been digging in the sand because I look at things from a very general point of view and then I focus in. So it's a different way of looking at life. And with starting Azurlis, I didn't start it in South Africa because I was in South Africa. I felt so constrained that here I was in a country of so much wealth, and there were so many people that were hungry, people in poverty, and people just didn't have enough to live. And here I was thinking about something so frivolous as skincare. So I didn't start it then. When I came to New Zealand, because that pressure was lifted off, that's when I thought, well, maybe I should start it. And that's when I kicked in about 15 years ago. So that's in the kind of a nutshell.
Wow. And you've been just plodding away for 15 years, trying to build it out and do all the aspects as the founder and director. How, like, I guess if you were to look at the 15-year period, like, what were maybe kind of 3 key phases over that 15-year period, and kind of how did you navigate them, I guess?
I'm still navigating. And as I've mentioned to you before, although, this is a journey, sometimes I feel, oh, golly, I hope I'm getting to the destination soon. It feels like, there are times when it's quite heavy going. So the first part was really highly exciting because I'm after having been in science for so long, I did a Master's of Entrepreneurship, and much to my surprise, I could handle accounting and finance and all those things quite easily. I actually thought, oh, this is a lot more interesting than I thought. But having done so well in the area doesn't really prepare you for what you find in the market. So, there was that initial excitement, and you launch away, you do all your SWOT analysis, and you think you've scoped everything, and then you hit the market and boom, your SWOT analysis is outdated. And so I had a number of periods where I really sort of, I bootstrapped myself. So I used to work back at university on and off to fund myself. And that was the sort of learning period where during the day I was at university, and after hours, I used, weekends, I used to do my company. That gave me a lot of freedom to be able to think what I wanted to do, but it didn't give me the financial security. So I think the first period is the excitement. The second period is your realization that even though you think you've got enough to cover the infrastructure and, just sort of penetrating the market in whatever way you can, and doing this as an online business, you realize just how fast the resources disappear. So that's sort of phase number 2. And phase number 3 is the fact that for me, because I started so late, it's the fact that as I'm getting older, I'm thinking, well, I'm soon going to be in a box and I still haven't achieved everything that I would like to. So finding ways to think myself in a position that I have a mind shift to look at the positive side. And I think that's what entrepreneurs need to do.
Kind of talking about the kind of the different stages of the business. Yes. And you were mentioning how you have been working on your business ultimately while you've been working in different areas of academia and so forth.
Yeah.
And that, I guess, was a blessing and a curse in some ways.
Absolutely, absolutely. So on the one hand, it provided the source of income to bootstrap whatever I needed to do. On the other hand, by the time I'm doing something that is related to my skincare business, it's after hours, I'm tired, and my head is full of what was happening in whatever I was supporting at the university. But I think more for me, that was part of a very valuable journey, because life is not modular. Although in the digital world, we tend to see it in a modular way and we plug in different things. Life isn't like that. Life is sort of like, big networks that cross over. There's some strands and strings that pass your life. Then there's flashes that sort of goes through that, others that sort of stick around for longer. And so it gave me the motivation to carry on regardless of what was happening. So it was that was a life training. No training in academia, no training in business could actually have given me the ability to stick around. And there were times when things were just quite challenging, but you can't show that. And also it's quite important for people to realize, because this is a real mindset mind game. So the more you focus on the items that are negative, that are bothering you, the more you'll be attracting, or the more you'll be more susceptible to notice other negative and other sort of uncomfortable stuff. So if you can take a breather, and I do this several times when I feel stressed, and if you can think that stuff happens around you, but you just need to learn to handle it, you end up being much more, much better equipped to manage whatever you have to do, even if it's making a decision in terms of your partners. There were times, like for instance, when I was talking to people about having investments, and I was being pressured, and bear in mind that I was needing the investment. And whatever I was doing in terms of my own bootstrapping, propping was just not enough. And I could feel the pressure. Like the one instance, a number of business guys, they were from overseas, and they were based in Wellington, and they were saying, no, but you just sign here, you just sign the agreement, we'll give you X amount. And I was asking them, okay, but you're giving me that amount, but what do you want in return? How are we going to go forward? No, you don't worry about that. Don't worry, we'll decide afterwards. And as hard as it was for me, I just said, no, I can't do it that way. I really can't. I need to see it in black and white. So if I can let people know, or just give them a tip, a very, 2-cent tip, stay true to your values. If there's something that you're really wanting to do, and someone wants to help you, but you're not sure that the alignment is right, don't do it. And of course, it prolonged my journey in a hopscotch fashion. But then I somehow got over that and did other things. So, of course, I'd love to have had a journey when you just have things falling on your lap, but I haven't.
That's funny. Yeah, totally. I mean, it's not a linear path. It's definitely not that. Almost like step functions or something.
Yeah, you do little steps, and if you ask me, do I feel I've achieved something? Yes, I've achieved a lot, no question. And wow, the amount of knowledge that I gained beyond what I was trained for, no question. am I capable of training myself? I became a troller of all sorts of digital stuff, so I could understand it, and I would join fora just to try and see why is it that there is an issue with something or another. So I have gained immensely with that. Has that been enough to transform the business from where it was 15 years ago to now? No, it hasn't, but it actually has transformed me. And something that's quite interesting, I'm always saying to people, don't think of products that you use as needing to work instantly. It's actually quite funny when I'm going to say this right now. And I always say to people, look, everything you do on your skin takes time, because it takes 28 days for the skin to renew. And as we get older, that takes longer. It's more like 60 days. So if you're applying something to your skin, or if you're taking a specific diet because you've got an aim, as you get older, it takes longer to achieve your goals. And I laughed a few weeks ago when I realized, oh my goodness, here I have been all my business life wanting for things to happen quickly, instantly. But it's just like looking after skin. You have to do something and you have to wait. So I've done some things in business. We've adapted something in the brand. We've changed the way in which the website is formatted, changed the way in which I tried to communicate some things to people. So
totally true. Everything takes a lot longer than you suspect. And you've just got to keep iterating and keep moving forwards,
but stay true
keep
to
moving.
your values, stay true who you are. I certainly couldn't go down a path where all of a sudden I was loading a whole lot of hype on the communication of our message. That just wouldn't feel aligned to who I am or what the concept is. Which is, the concept is really about looking after yourself without harming anyone, and it's vegan. I don't use any animal derived products, just using botanical extracts, botanical oils, and formulating the products because of all the knowledge that I've had in biochemistry and chemistry, you name it, so I can do that. But doing it in a very present way. That's of course there is a process of maturing, if you don't want to see the word aging in there, but it is aging. But at the same time, if you are thriving in what you're doing, you feel it's positive, and that's what I focused on. It's not easy to sustain all the time, because there are times where I do feel, blah.
For sure.
But I've spoken to a number of schools just recently, kids that are in year 9. And they're all excited about things that they can or cannot do. And they tend to choose professions that are, being a sports person or an actor or something. And I said to them, look, at the end of the day, you have to do that is something that feels real to you, that feels true to you. And because you become good at it, others will recognize that. And you become noted in being recognized for what you do, and that attracts more opportunities. So never stray away from your values. So I couldn't just start saying, well, my skincare is going to make you look 20 years younger when I know it isn't. I mean, it's just crazy. But it's going to make you feel good because it feels good as you put it on. So do you see the drift? It's slightly different.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, you talked about a little bit about I guess you're almost a little bit concerned about succession at this point.
Yes, and I am, and it's a case. What do you do? I have 2 sons. Neither of them are interested in skincare, and it's a case. What does one do?
it's a whole strategy. I mean, I think, we did a study as eccuity. We did a business sales report study actually on businesses that have been sold in New Zealand. 5,000, we looked at the data point of 5,000. And, there's some really interesting data points in there on why businesses sell and how do you actually get the multiple that you feel you deserve and how to optimize that multiple. And, succession is such a big thing. And it's almost a little bit, and I think it's connected to the Western society around not wanting to be transparent and open about capital and wealth, that those conversations around succession and estate planning and stuff are just not happening at the right level that they should be.
I think you probably don't include them early on. One of the things that we had in our Masters of Entrepreneurship as part of our business case development, we had to have an exit plan. So I did. I had an exit plan after 5 years, but it just didn't happen.
No.
And I think in the training of people to be involved in business or in any form of transactional sort of engagement, people are not trained to position for the changes that are happening in the market because everyone is still focusing on themselves. You still, whether or not you have a business or whether you're a solopreneur, you're still focusing on yourself. And you don't look at it from the point of view of what it will be like when it goes forward. The companies that we sort of think of, big companies like car companies, they've been, or even Icebreaker, they were developed at a time when the world was slightly different than it is now. And there was a possibility to have an infrastructure put together in a different way. Now, we've got more choices because of the way we connected, digital world galore. AI is coming in, opening incredible opportunities, but it also frames the way in which you can do things in a very different way. So we, even the advent of social media, when I was a kid, there was no such thing. What you saw on the news in your country was the truth. Nowadays, you have platforms, you have the ones we know about, and then we have the dark web. and somewhere in between is the truth. But once something catches fire, when it goes viral, even if it's nonsense, it's very difficult to actually reverse it.
Yeah,
So
I mean, look, it's
the world we live in.
Yeah, I kind of think of it around signal versus noise. We live in a high noise world.
High noise, yes.
A lot of noise, and your objective is to try and focus on what's signal from noise.
Yeah, but But you need a lot of, you also need a lot of resources to be able to do that, because your voice, like for instance, having a voice on the web, everyone used to say to me, you have a company online, everyone can see you. No, that's not true. In order for you to
not enough people see you in a way.
Yeah, exactly. In order to be seen, you need to infiltrate a whole lot of resources, and so it goes. And as the world becomes more and more competitive, the cost of the resources becomes higher and higher and higher. So you become more and more part of the noise and less out of the peak that you need to be, like the periscope. So it's very interesting. But I mean, look, I've kind of accepted that, in the world I'm in, because of the competition in the universe I'm in, it's probably one of those things that I'm not going to be, reaching all the goals I wanted to. But in terms of an entrepreneurial thought gain, I've gained a lot. I've developed a lot. I've contributed a lot. In terms of the financial wealth, like you talk about the Gates, the Elon Musk, and no ways, no, just not that way. But it's a funny thing. Would one trade where I am for having more of the more sort of financial benefits? It depends.
Yeah, for sure. I think that
I don't know. It's a very individual kind of question, very individual position. And I suppose I probably feel different every second.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, for sure. Because obviously I mean, it's kind of intertwined, but yeah, I mean, when you're unwell, you don't have your health, then all of the resources you have, all the nice things, all the materialistic things become a little bit less important and perhaps pale in comparison to, being able to, effectively operate, right? But at the same time, it's about trying to position yourself to be anti-fragile, I think, right? And be able to continue playing the game.
Yeah.
And I think those are the two things.
Yeah, it's interesting you talk about the fragility. So I don't believe in faking it till you make it. And I think that's a terrible thing to do. But at the same time, you can't be so vulnerable that everyone cuts you down. So it's a balance. It really is a balance. How much do you express in terms of your fragility, vulnerability, but using that as a form of ammunition to show to others, actually, we can have a transformational experience. And this is something that a lot of coaches, a lot of people that work with people to improve the way you think, the mindset changes, teach you. There was a very interesting book that I came across recently from Dr. James Doty, Doty. James, he's no longer alive. He died in July this year, where he talks about the fact that we tend to be very self-critical and we don't have enough self-compassion. And he was a neuroscientist, neurobiologist, neurosurgeon. He was just quite famous. And something happened quite dramatic in his life, and he lost everything. He was apparently about to buy an island in New Zealand, which, by the way, I hope it wasn't Whakaari Island, because it would have been not a good buy. But he never bought it because his life collapsed. And so he had to start again. And that's when he started examining all these patterns, these thinking patterns. And he became, quite famous with his approach. So with the compassion and think from the heart. It's all great to achieve all these things that are external, external things that you have. But if you have that self-compassion and compassion to others and the goodwill, good intentions, you'll achieve a lot more. So very interesting. Once again, it's not something that you achieve overnight, and you've got to work through the stuff that that kind of weighs you down. But once you do it, it becomes a form of just breathing.
Yeah. Well, I think that's kind of peace, isn't it?
It is contentment.
Yeah, which is kind of what people would actually maybe that's kind of part of what wealth really provides. A lot of it can perhaps provide that level of peace that so many of us obviously don't have the privilege yet of being able to obtain.
Yeah, and also sometimes we probably see it, but we don't, because we're so surrounded by a whole lot of problematic issues. One of the things that, like Stephen Covey, famous Stephen Covey and Carnegie, all those, sort of early 20th century successful business people, they all did something which was very clever, which was surround themselves with people that gave them good advice. So they weren't necessarily the best people everywhere, but they knew where to find the good advice. And often it's in front of us, but we don't see it.
Yeah,
We're
for
not
sure.
receptive to it.
Mhm.
And it's not about being very clever. It's not about being very intelligent. It's about being perceptive, but that's a difficult one to explain.
Perceptive and persistent, perhaps.
Yes, and yes. So it comes back to Stephen Covey's P's, isn't it? The product. What did he say? There were the 7 P's, and in the end there were the 8 P's, which were all about product and doing things that moved you forward. But product and productivity.
Yeah. Okay. So, so you were mentioning. So, what? I mean, let yourself fast forward 5 years from today. Like, you did talk a little bit about how you were kind of concerned about succession in a way, but I guess what's the happy path? Do you think you have a happy path in your vision right now?
Yeah. Look, it's an interesting game because I may not have achieved all the things I would want to, but I'm working towards achieving some of the things that I'd like to do. So I've been wanting to write a book, and it's a novel, and I've started doing that. So my little free time, I sort of I include elements of what was something that has been in my head for a long time. I also have a whole lot of ideas of helping out young people just to recognize the good in themselves. And I don't have to do that in relation to skincare. It's just being involved in some things in the community. And I do that. So I see myself more involved in that over the next few years.
Well, those are two pretty big items,
Yeah,
right?
and it's
Writing a book and also thinking about how you're going to help steward the next generation's minds.
but nothing, so it's not as if I'm planning to go and have major communication to Jupiter or Mars, or nothing like that. Very earthly bound. I would love to be more involved in making people understand that actually at the end of the day, it doesn't matter whether you're black, blue, pink, whatever ethnicity you have, we're all fundamentally the same. We just have different color hair or skin or different shape, just because it's diversity across the human species. But at the end of the day, there are a whole lot of things that we can do to help each other to have a better life, and not to be so dependent on how others drive us. And I don't know, I'm not quite sure. I don't know exactly how I'll do it, but it's something that has been incubating in me for so long. I know I'll do it.
Yeah, that's awesome.
I don't have a plan yet because I feel that in so many ways that is so intangible. So what I tend to do is step by step. So when I'm dealing with some kids or some people, I will say something and I'll say, okay, what about, have you thought about this? Or how do you want to do it? And I will drop little things, which they may want to pick up or not. And interestingly, just recently with one of the kids that I was working with, and she came back to me and she had some really quite profound questions about what she wanted to do. And I was quite startled. I thought, I didn't think I would have had that impact. So that was really quite an interesting reaction. Equally, you find the other way. I mean, this is quite funny, but it just the kind of thing I came across. At this one school, there was a group of kids, only females, and they thought they were pretty sharp. And one of them, and we'd all been giving a kind of a small presentation on what we did, how we did it, and what we valued. And so each of us, there were 8 of us that were in this role model sort of kind of carousel. And then they asked us what certain things they wanted to know about us. And the first thing they wanted to know about me was, what kind of topping do I like on my cupcakes? And I said, well, I'm not even a foodie. I don't eat just because I need to eat lots. I eat to live. But cupcakes, okay. It's an interesting question. I never thought of it. But coming to think about it, maybe fish and chips. And these kids sort of like got startled because, and I thought, well, ask a silly question, you'll get a silly answer. And after that, we broke the ice, and then they asked some things that were interesting to them. So I did say to one of them afterwards, look, I'll eat you alive. I'm not scared of your questions. So it's, if they don't take something seriously, it's okay. Just let's have a joke.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, sometimes you got to just laugh.
You just laugh, fish and chips topping on cupcakes. Great.
Well, that's a savoury option. I'm more of a fan of savoury myself, so I would probably go with that, just because that's kind of
You'd never
preference.
find that in a store, would you?
No. Fish cakes, though. You'll know that.
Yeah, fish cakes. But I mean, what made me think about that was, if you'll probably be too young to remember, but there was Monty Python and John Cleese.
Yep.
With the skit on going into an ice cream shop and see, what flavors have you got? And there were 50 different flavors. And he said, no, I don't like any of them. Do you have fish and chips? And that's what made me think, okay, so you want to push me, I'll push you. So you learn to modulate how you encounter the challenges in your life. And look, we are incredibly fortunate to be here, even though I had rain in my office and you had some funny disturbance with your microphone. We are so incredibly fortunate. We live in a relatively peaceful country. Not everything is peaceful. There's all sorts of things that need to be resolved. I totally give that. But we are so fortunate not to live in a country where we have to be concerned. Is there a war in the border? There's not. Do we have land where we can grow food? We do. Are there still options for people to do all sorts of things? Yes. So we are very fortunate. So it would be awful of me if I melted down because I couldn't achieve all my goals. That would be so selfish. Of course, there are times where I feel like a cockroach. But then there are times where I feel like a Hulk. Coming up.
But there's a great quote from Charlie Munger, who's one of my heroes, who was Warren Buffett's business partner. And he actually lost one of his kids to leukemia. And obviously back then especially, because he just died last year, unfortunately, just before, about this time last year, actually, just at the end of the year, a couple of days before his 100th birthday. I guess there's two things there. One is that he said you can walk through the streets crying, but you can't stop.
That's true. Yeah, that's actually true. Yeah.
And another one that I think is a little bit relevant to kind of some of your sentiment, which is, and it was in the last interview he gave, he said, I no longer want to catch a 300-pound tuna.
Right. Yeah. You're right with the 50-pound or 10 pounds. Yeah.
And obviously because he didn't have the strength, right? And that's no longer a priority to pull out a 300.
Sometimes I think it's not beyond. It's actually beyond not having the strengths. It's just that you realize there's a lot more to life than having the need to have that goal. that there've been so many goals along the way for which you've never sort of gave any recognition because you just sort of
Yeah, right.
assumed that they were happening. And when you think, when you come down to sitting down, having a conversation with this, sometimes having a conversation with the person next door to you in the bus, you go and travel in the bus, and you learn something from them, is as important as winning the lotto. They're different magnitudes, but we can't consider one bigger than the other. They're just different. And I think that's what we've lost. And as you get older, you begin to see that, it's not that I'm giving up. It's just that I've achieved quite a lot. I may not have achieved everything, but then do you ever achieve everything? Because the minute you have this, you want something.
Well, I think human nature is to actually change the goalposts anyway, right?
Yeah, all
you
the
think
time.
about what
Exactly.
your goals were 20
Yeah.
years ago versus today, or whatever you thought you could handle 10 years ago versus today.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's very different. I think it's just human nature to change the goals, change the goalposts.
I don't know if this is entirely helpful for your audience. I'm a great believer that we all have a role.
Yeah.
We all have some form of significance. Not all of us are going to be prime ministers or state presidents or kings or queens. That's not the point. But think of the significance that you can have in having the joy for doing something. I love roses. I love sorting out my roses, and I get such joy of growing my Just Joey's. A simple name like that, it produces a rose that is this size with the most incredible scent. Does it matter to anybody else? No. But I still enjoy it. It's my significance.
It's cool. Yeah, no, that's really great. And yeah, I think it's important to, enjoy stewarding the things you're doing and seeing the produce of it as well. And, sometimes you have good harvests, sometimes you have not so great harvests, and that's life. But, we traverse and we continue forward. And I think that's your message, right? And it's been awesome hearing a bit about your story and learning from you today. I've really enjoyed it. So thank you so much for coming on the pod. I really appreciate it.
It's a pleasure. Well, thank you, Charlie. It's been most interesting to hear about your background as well and our common bond. You have some Portuguese blood.
Yes, that's right. So thank you so much.
Thank you.